Hello, welcome to Paint by Blunders. Today we are looking at the Krieg artillery team and making it look nice and grimy. If you're new to the channel and liking what you are seeing, please do consider subscribing, give us a thumbs up, comment, all of those lovely things, because it really does help the channel grow and I appreciate it immensely. Alternatively, we do have merch now, so if you want to pick up a t-shirt, hoodie or sweatshirt, anything like that, they should all be down below as well. Enough of me waffling, let's get to the video. So here we have our little Krieg guy. All I've done is given him a zenithal prime with the airbrush just to, you know, make him look a little bit more detailed, and it'll help with some of the coats we're doing. I've not stuck these down to the model, obviously, because they are quite fiddly. So rust grey is first up, and I'm going to be using this to do the sort of sleeves and the underside of the jackets. And two thin coats here, just trying to be careful as we go, but with this ugly method of painting, as I call it, where we do all the base coats before washing, it's not the end of the world. So next up, we're going to be looking at the jacket again and the trousers. For the trousers, we're going to be using Dark Reaper from Citadel. And for the outer jacket, we're going to be using Scale Colours Caspian Blue. Now, I've only just got this paint and I absolutely love the colour of it, but it doesn't have the best coverage. Again, we're just trying to be neat and tidy with it. I think the majority of this model I use a size 0 from Raphael, partly because I was being lazy and I forgot to change, but use whatever brush you feel most comfortable with and that gives you the best control. So next up is the leg wraps, and I'm going to be using Rakkar Flesh for this. You could also do the little tube coming out of his mask if you prefer, but just for a slight tonal variation, I'm going to use Zandri Dust for that. Alternatively, you could use Zandri Dust for the wraps if you wanted that creamier tone. So onto the metallics, I'm going to be using Vallejo Metal Colour Steel. It is an airbrush paint, so it is quite watery, but it is a fantastic metallic colour, tried and tested by everyone. It is lovely. The only thing I will say is you have to keep giving it a little zhuzh, because it does separate quite easy on the palette, even if you shake it up like a madman. Next up, browns. Because we're going to be trying to do these fairly speedy, Mournfang Brown. It's a nice mid-tone brown, and once you've washed it, etc., it's pretty much a one and done. I'm also going to be doing the belts and the front pack in this as well. Last up is the little bit of Zandri Dust for his mask, and then that'll be all the base coats done. So with the base coats all done, we're going to keep this nice and simple and bring up my old trusty friend, Streaking Grime. This time though, I'm going to be watering it down, probably by half, with just some thinner. Normally, as you've seen with a lot of these Streaking Grime things, you just put it on straight out of the pot and then wick it away. I find with smaller models with lots of little details, you can lose some of the details, and it's also just a waste of paint. So we're going to thin it down beforehand and then still use the standard wicking away with a sponge, but you just don't use as much paint and it's a bit more subtle. So here he is. I've got my little makeup sponge. I'm going to put some thinner on the tip to swell the tip. I don't think I've ever said that before, and I hope to never say it again. And we're just going to start pulling that paint away in a downward motion. You can also dab it. You can also use a paintbrush. there's no right or wrong way. They all create nice streaks and effects and different sort of weathering looks. So just find what you like and what you like the look of. For me, I always use a sponge. I sometimes come in with a brush, but a sponge is normally my friend. And I like to drag it down as if grime is sort of falling from them. And the lovely thing about this technique is if you don't like how much is left on there, you can come back in and take more off. And if you feel like you've taken too much off, you can always just reapply it and rinse and repeat until you get it to the level you like. So these are our free crew. If you wanted them just speedy painted and on the table, you could easily just leave them here, paint in the eyes and the lenses, etc. and, you know, job done. But we're just going to come back in a few very subtle highlights, essentially just using the base colours pre-grime. And that will be enough for me just to pick them out. So we're going to come back in first with Rack Our Flesh on the mask and the wraps. Now I'm going to use a lighter silver, something like Stormhost silver, something a bit thicker so I can get a more solid edge highlight. And like with the helmet and such, I'm just dabbing it on. I'm not trying to get the most sharpest lines. And I'm doing the exact same for the jacket with the rust grey and the Caspian blue. If you did want to highlight it further, you could pull out the Fenrisian grey. And, you know, you can go to town on it. I don't particularly want to, just because it takes up loads more time. And this is a quick, effective video, not a in-depth, you know, let's do 5 layers and make it look phenomenal. In regards to the binoculars and the eyes I literally just did a little bit of Mephiston red and then picked out some Evil Sun Scarlet for the corner. The binoculars, I just coated them in white and then just put a thick coat of, I think it was warp lightning green contrast, but making sure that I pulled it right into the middle to try and make it look like a curved lens. The only other bit of footage that I didn't get because my memory card had a fit when I was shooting this video is the gold. All I did was use Retributor armor to pick out the Aquillas and the buttons. Also, a tiny bit of rust that you might be able to see on this engineer. All that is a very watery Mournfang brown, and it acts as a very effective rust in my opinion. So next up we have the gun, the star of the show. Thunderhawk Blue is what I'm going to coat this entire beastie with. Please ignore how I primed it. I was testing out the Galeri Mobius 2.0. The people at Galeri very kindly sent me this to test out. And I think the products are incredible, to the point that I immediately bought one of their other sort of trigger airbrushes for prop painting, etc. And it is fantastic. But yes, you don't need to prime it like this because it is going to get completely covered in Thunderhawk Blue. As always, the Army Painter Airbrush Medium. With Citadel paints, I pretty much just use it as a 50-50 mix, and I've never had a problem with the airbrush. With the Thunderhawk Blue done, we're going to start looking at the metallics. And as you can see, the priming I did makes no difference. I try to make videos where you don't have to have an airbrush to follow along, sort of thing. Sometimes, you know, it's essential depending on what I'm doing, but this one is not the case. So the Vallejo Metal Colour Steel again. There's quite a few little bits of metallic gubbins on this. You know, lots of little exposed pipe for, you know, handrails and for the feet and, you know, bits and bobs like that. But it's good because it does break it up. After that, we are using Mornfang Brown to do the wooden platforms. For the wheels, I'm using Vallejo model colour German Grey, which is slowly becoming my favourite dark grey. For any of the gold, the same as the crew, I'm using Retributor armour from Citadel. There are a few little interesting bits of gubbins on here, like a screen, a phone, and the two little like sensors on the front of the gun. Chef's choice on this, I've just done for a green little screen, red phone because I want it to look like the phone from the old Batman show or Danger Mouse. I'm sure that was a red phone. It's when someone tells me it wasn't, but that's what I envisioned. And the same with the sensor at the front, I did like a red sensor. So with the majority of the base colours done, transfers. Now, I'm not big into my 40k lore and etc. But I picked up some transfers that I thought this might look quite cool down the side of the gun. I'm not going to do a massive long explanation on applying transfers because there are many better videos that will probably explain it quicker and better than me. Essentially, I've put down some gloss varnish before applying this, and then I used Vallejo decal softener and decal fix once they were down. Before then, it was a case of just using a bit of water, pushing them in place with my little craft knife, scratching away some damages on the edges, and then using a little makeup sponge just to push the air bubbles out and help it conform. Now, wash for the gun. Payne's Grey. For any of you who don't know Payne's Grey, it is a blue grey. Some people put it in the blue category, some people put it into greys. Each brand is slightly different, but it is a blue grey. Now, I've just used some of the Winsor & Newton thinner, which you would use for your streak and grime, etc. And I've just made it into the consistency of a wash. I love oil washes, and as per all of my videos, I always harp on about them. I highly recommend people use more oil washes. I just think they look so natural, and the way you can blend them away once they're dried is just fantastic. So I'm going around pushing it into certain details to start, but I will be covering the entire model. One of the things I love about oils as well, they are so cost effective. I think for that tube was maybe £4 or £5 from the Range or Hobbycraft, if you know those shops in the UK. And I used the Winsor & Newton Spirit, which I got from the same place, which I think I got a litre for, I think, £8. And that will last me pretty much my entire hobby career. And when it's done, I'm just going through, wicking away and just creating some interesting blends and streaks and just lovely, grimy, broken down artillery piece stuff. So we're going to start doing some more weathering, and we're going to be using straight streak and grime now, but we're going to be using it to actually make streaks this time. And the way to do that is to put it over in little concentrated areas where you want the streaks to occur or dirt to have been, built up. And you just let it dry, maybe, half hour, 40 minutes. You can leave it much longer, but, we're all impatient. We're painting a model. And then you go in with just thinner on your paintbrush and you just drag it down, and you can move the pigment and move the enamel paint to make these lovely downward streaks. Or you can use it just to feather off as if there's like dirt around a rivet. So more weathering now. I'm going to be using Dirty Down Rust. This stuff is magic in a bottle. So essentially, you just apply it with a brush, it reacts with the air within seconds and creates this amazing rust effect. Now, if you want a few more contrasts between light and dark, after you've applied it, you could literally just dunk your brush in a tiny bit of water and just sort of scribble over it or draw a line where you want it to react differently, and that will help create those darker and brighter orange tones. It's incredibly easy to use, but has a bit of a learning curve sometimes because it can be a bit clogged up in the bottle. Essentially, the best way to find out if it's going to work, it's got a steel ball in the bottle. You need to shake it like mad, and if you cannot hear that steel ball, moving around, you probably need to get in there with a cocktail stick and just give it a zhuzh. Alternatively, I'm also told if you just sit it in some warm water for 10 minutes before you're going to use it, just to help loosen it, because I don't know what magic is in that bottle, but sometimes it needs a little bit of a helping hand. And that is enough of me waffling on about Dirty Down Rust. Edge highlighting this thing, we're going to be using Fenrisian Grey. One last thing, a little dry brush of Mornfang Brown just over the footsteps, and also just a cheeky edge highlight on some of the bits of silver. You can do it on the blue sections as well, so it looks like a bit of chipping. So I barely stuck my artillery piece down, so I could take it off the base so I could get a nice even layer of the base paint. I'm using AK Interactive, I think it's called Deep Earth, Dark Earth, and I'm just smothering that all over the base. So when I'm using texture paint on a large surface like this, I use a damp makeup brush and I just dab along the entire thing to try and make it look nice and uniform. For any of you, if you've ever done sort of concreting or anything like that, it's like trying to bring the fat to the top. And it does create a nice even bit of textured earth. Once that is dry, all I'm going to do is use like a pigment powder wash and just spread it over the top. And that's how it looks. So I'm going to add the crew and the cannon back and a few of the bits of gubbins, and I will show you the final step at how I try to merge it all together. So here it is. All the gubbins is on. And I've put in some little tufts of grass. One interesting thing I saw, just to try and make it look in keeping with a battlefield, a gentleman done it on Instagram and he just burnt the tops of them, and I thought that's pretty cool, I'm going to copy him. So that is what I did. So on to the very last step for me, very strange, and this is just making another pigment wash. For those of you who don't know what I'm on about when I say a pigment wash, all I do is mix a lot of pigment per fixer with the pigment powder, and I just brush it round, because I like the idea of just ramming it in with a brush, which a lot of people do, but then I always find it comes away and it just doesn't look how I want it to. So I make it into a weird wash and I just dab it round, and even when it's sort of drying, you can see how the pigment's going to show through, and you've still got time to adjust it. But it's just how I do it, and I like it. And here he is, the finished Gundeliandan. I absolutely love this model. I love the crew. The little gentleman with the binoculars is a particular favourite of mine. I added the little cup of tea, or in this case it's the black Americano, because these guys are classy. and little fire extinguisher just in case they burn the grass tufts again. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you like the result. If you are new here and you do like what I am doing, please do consider like, sub, comment, all those nice things, because it really does help me out. Thanks again. See you on the next one.